Hello, everybody. This is Trisha Schmalhofer with BAM, Badasses, Alchemists, Mystics. And today is a special kind of day because who do I have here in the studio with me?
Leah Williamson.
And Leah, I had you on BAM a while ago, beginning of the year, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. I don't remember exactly.
Maybe end of last year. It was after your book, Surfing the Sea of Chi, was released. And so Leah and I have been collaborating and doing a lot and growing BAM. And we're going to talk about that. But she was insistent, weren't you?
Indeed.
She was insistent that I needed to be a guest on my podcast. And why are you insistent on that, Leah?
Because you are the original badass alchemist and mystic. And a lot of people don't really know who you are and what you do and what makes you a badass. So it's high time people learn the truth about you, Trisha Schmalhofer.
The truth.
Yes.
I am a mystery, a true mystic.
Not any longer.
I know.
All will be revealed shortly.
Yes, it will. I have no doubt you will do that. You will uncover. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
Cool.
So where are we going with this, girl?
I'm going to cheat and read right off my notes just to make it easy for myself and to get out the words correctly. So everybody knows you as Trisha Schmalhofer, the host of BAM. Some people might know you from your work with med healers, but I'd like to talk today about where you've been, where you are now, and where you're going. So let's start with where you've been. Med healers is a huge success. How long has that been around?
The name Med Healers, that business was created about 4 years ago. But I was doing healing work way before that. It's probably close to 22 years now, off and on, that I've been doing massage therapy, craniosacral, Reiki, all that stuff we're going to talk about. But Med Healers was birthed about 4 years ago.
I see.
Yes.
Okay. So you mentioned a few of the things you do with med healers. You know, I accidentally ran over your bio the other day and I was like, oh my gosh, this woman has such a huge skill set, so many certifications, and a lot of it, I don't even know what it is. And I've been in this healthcare industry for almost 20 years myself. So tell us a little bit more about what you're trained to do and what your passions are to do in your med healers practice.
Okay, so I have to look at that bio because I'm sure I have stuff to add. I'm always taking classes. I'm a knowledge seeker. And so I'm always searching for new things to help me in my life. And then I pass it on to my clients. And that's something my clients and patients, I have both, that they always kind of thank me for, because they you're always sharing with us what you're learning, and then you're bringing it into us, so they feel like they're always getting the new information. So med healers, the point of that name was medicine, and also meditation. The word med is in there. And med is really about medicine in all of its forms, and then healers, and it was plural because I always had the sense that I was going to be working in collaboration with others. And but med healers is pretty much just me, and the healing arts and medicine kind of blending together. So science and spirit blending together is really the heart of what med healers is all about. And some of the modalities that I utilize, I would say my main one is craniosacral therapy, and I studied with Upledger Institute. And Dr. Upledger also believes science and spirit came together, and he was a DO, a doctor of osteopathy, and worked in, I think it was in Michigan, and he worked with all these physicists and scientists, and he developed this therapy that works with the inner physician. or as we call it now in the field, inner wisdom. And people thought he was a quack. But if they couldn't figure out what was wrong with someone, guess who they sent them to? But Dr. John. So I got introduced to craniosacral after massage therapy school, and I was practicing as a massage therapist, and I was working on someone, and she was like, you really should consider craniosacral. You really have the touch for it, and it seems like it would be a good match. And it's a very science-based therapy because we're working with the brain, we're working with the nervous system, working with trauma in the fascia, and we're working with membranes inside of the brain and cerebral spinal fluid flow. So that's very subtle but intricate and very important parts of the body. So when she first said that, I'm like, well, I remember in massage school, we read a section on cranio, and I was thinking, that sounds a little bit hard, But I went to Craniosacral 1 and couldn't feel shit.
Yeah.
You're supposed to feel this craniosacral rhythm. It's a whole pulse that the whole body gives out, and it's this incredible thing. And I didn't feel anything the first day. 0. And I'm like, oh my God, this class was expensive, and I'm not feeling anything. Holy shit, what the hell am I going to do, right? And so I went to the hotel room that night, and I prayed. I said, please, God, please let me feel this, because if I can't feel this, then there's no point. And I practiced on myself, and I'm feeling it, and I keep praying, and I keep practicing. Then all of a sudden, I felt it on my head, and it feels like the head is like a balloon that's expanding and contracting very subtly, and it feels different everywhere else in the body. And it's like this breath, this expansion, and then a deflation or a contraction. I like the word deflation better than contraction. It's an in and an out. And once I felt it on myself, I felt it on my partner the next day, and then it's like you can't not feel it. Is that the right? Like I put my hands on someone, and now I can even feel it when I'm not even touching you, because it expands out into the energy field. And why I'm spending so much time talking about cranial is, even though I do a ton of other things, I feel that the craniosacral rhythm is truly the breath of the multidimensional being. It is the breath of the whole being. And it expands out into areas we don't even fathom. And that's why I can feel it across the room. Or if I'm doing an intake with someone, I am tapping into not only the craniosacral rhythm now, but there's other aspects now that I've tapped into because I have a lot of intuition and a lot of psychic abilities. So do you want me to keep going?
Well, it sounds like craniosacral was a doorway into subtler modalities for you to tap into the web of existence, so to speak, in a way that you can't touch with your hands so much.
Yes. It started with cranial, and you're right. It was the doorway in, because we work with the fascia web in the body in craniosacral, and that concept of fascia, or this web in the body, there's so much research about fascia now, where before it was like, it's just this connective tissue, and surgery, we just slash that open, throw that out, we don't need that, right? It just covers everything. Well, no. Fascia is a web that has all these properties. It has it's a word called thixotropic. It means it's like putty. It actually can mold into shapes. That's why repetitive injury, where you're like hunched over a computer, right? That your body will start to actually change shape with fascia, but it can change back. And trauma is held in fascia. The energy body, the meridians in traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture and acupressure, the chakra system, anything that all areas of the body, the fascia is how it gets moved around, and it's truly what connects everything. One of my craniosacral classes was called the immune response, and we actually worked with immune cells, and we felt the rhythm of the body in each cell, and we got like these impressions from each of the immune cells. And what we learned is through the fascia network is how all of our immune cells connect to each other. Because how else, you're thinking, oh yeah, like the endocrine system, all the glands in the body, like how do they really communicate with each other? And they're not connected, but yet they know what the other thing's doing. And yes, there's hormones and chemical reactions, but how do they actually get to each other? And so it's this web. And as you were saying, and as I was alluding to, is this web, I have noticed, continues out past the skin and then goes into energy fields. It connects people. Almost all cultures have reference to a net or a web or some kind of connected field, unified field now in quantum physics. You talk a lot about this in your book, Surfing the Sea of Chi. The ocean has a web. It's connected, which extends out into the air. And being a psychic, and that word, gets tossed around a lot. It's an intuitive, but it's psychics and intuitives and empaths and all of these words that are kind of thrown around in the spiritual development field. That's how we get our information, is through this web, because it connects and there's energy vibration that flows through there. So a psychic is basically reading vibrations. They're picking it up, picking up the tones, the tunes, the frequencies, and then we're interpreting it. So that's not everything I do, but I think I just went off on a tangent, which is how my web of my mind works, right?
You really enjoy the cranial sacral work. It's quite obvious.
I do.
Sounds like in learning to connect with that subtler structure within the body, you are also able to connect with a subtler structure around the body, and you use that interpretation that you get from your psychic abilities to help bring people back into balance.
Yes.
Organize that structure more. Could you view what you do that way?
Yes. So other modalities that I use that kind of have come out of that is Reiki, which is a form of energy medicine that has been around forever. And I resisted Reiki for a while because it had a lot of things around it that I was like, it just seems like everyone does Reiki. But I did end up learning it, and it really did open up things for me. And through that gateway, I started getting even more perceptive and aware of these subtle energies in this web. And I had to decide, though, that I welcomed it and was open to it, and also realized that I had a degree of I don't like the word control, but I had a say in how quickly and how much I opened up to it. And a lot of people that are starting out, if they're healers or they're just really kind of looking at psychic or mediumship or any kind of intuitive stuff, they become like victims of it. It's like, oh my gosh, my ears, I keep hearing these sounds. And yes, that's opening up, but you are in charge. You, me, be empowered that these are gifts that a higher part of yourself it's you connecting in with a higher self or a higher part of yourself. This is my belief. This might not be other people's. And you have a say. You can turn that dial down. You can even say out loud, like, hey, back up a little bit, like that's a little bit more than I'm ready for. And don't turn it off, though. Some people that I've worked with have turned it totally off because it scares them. But it is ultimately a gift, and it's kind of a fun discovery of figuring out like how you can utilize it in your life, in your career, in your personal life, or
So that's what you were talking about. You have clients and you have patients.
Yes.
So talk about that. That's in terms of healing and in your career and right?
I am blessed with a lot of skills. I am. And
that's why you're on the other end today.
I am a badass alchemist mystic. And you know what? I'm okay saying that now. It used to be in the beginning, oh, it's too egotistical to say that you're good at stuff. No, like I've really embraced that. I have gotten so much feedback from people that what I am offering has helped them. And it's not me being like, yes, I am fabulous. But it's like, no, look, I can do this. And if I can help people. So your question, of course, now I've forgotten what the question was. Can you?
I forgot it too.
About,
well, let's just keep going because I think we've
clients and patients.
Difference, yeah.
You know what? We do need to go to a break. So when we come back, help me remember, Jesse.
We're going to move on.
Clients and patients. No,
we're getting stuck in the past.
There's a different. Okay.
We have to move forward.
All right. So we're going to be right back. Before we do, though, we're going to talk about BAM Community Space.
Yes.
It is something Leah and I are kind of working on together. Not kind of, we are. That has come out of Badasses Alchemist Mystics, the podcast, and has kind of morphed into more of a community gathering, which originally was what Med Healers I thought was going to be. So it's ended up manifesting in another form called BAM Community. So we do have a space in Palm Bay, Florida, but we're also live streaming. BAMcommunity11.com is the website. BAMcommunity11@gmail.com is the email if you want to get on our mailing list and keep up with what we're doing. We'll be right back.
Hey there, this is Jesse Hall, and I want to remind you to tune into Business Elite Brevard Edition. And what we do on Business Elite Brevard Edition is bring to you some of the biggest movers and shakers on the Space Coast. These could be industry leaders, tech innovators, and social influencers. And what we do is kind of bring them on, ask them some of the most relevant questions that you may not know about. And these are people who may not be in the news, but they are making moves behind the scenes. Again, tune in. Business Elite Brevard Edition.
Join us for the fresh, new For Your Best Self podcast with Drs. Anita Saluja and Rebecca Novo of Dermatology plus Plastic Surgery. We will reveal the facts about techniques, trends, products, and procedures to be your best self. The first and only podcast combining the synergy of aesthetic dermatology plus plastic surgery. Search For Your Best Self on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify.
You're listening to Space Coast Podcast, home of the greatest podcasts on the Space Coast. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor or have your own show, email us at spacecoastpodcast@hotmail.com. Space Coast Podcast. Talk hard!
Okay, we're back. This is Trisha with BAM, Badasses, Alchemists, Mystics, and Leah Williamson is here, and she is interviewing me, and I'm just talking and talking and talking. So
that's right. So now it's my turn.
She's putting her foot down.
She
wants to move forward, and I'm like, but I want to talk about this, and she's taking charge, which is good. That's what a host should do.
Yes. Okay. So we've talked about your success with Med Healers. In fact, it is quite a bit of success. I mean, I heard about you long before I met you and what you did. People were raving about the success stories that they had in their lives from working with you. So,
oh wow,
there's absolutely no doubt of the success of Med Healers. But then you decided to just do something different. You started the BAM podcast.
Yes.
How did that start, and why did you call it BAM?
So,
briefly.
I know, right? Joanna Salerno hi, Joanna, she'll probably watch later, is Jesse Hall's, my producer for this podcast, his mama. And his mom and I did a coaching program together, and we had to call each other and do this stuff. And she goes, you know, you have a great voice. You have a lot of interesting things to say. You should really get in touch with my son. He lives in your area. He has a podcast studio. I was like, yeah, I've been thinking about doing podcasts because I always have my hands in a gazillion things, and I just love exploring things and doing fun things. So she came to visit. We came into the studio, did our first episode 1, and I loved it, and it just kept going. And I said, you know what? I think I'm pretty good at this. I really enjoy this, and I know a lot of cool people, and I can have them on as guests. And I love relationships and chit-chatting and helping people shine their light. And it just kind of happened. Well, so I thought about the name, and I just love the name Badasses, and it's kind of in the cultural lexicon right now that people are badasses. I was doing firearms training at the time with my friend Jay, so I was feeling really badass, you know. And the alchemists and the alchemist part in that coaching program, that's one of my archetypes of my brand, or who I am, an alchemist and a sage. So the name for this was going to be Badasses, Alchemists, Wizards, and Sages, which was Boz.
That doesn't ring so well.
And I kind of laughed, and I think I said it to Jesse and Joanna and my family, and they're like, I don't know. Well, it was Joanna on our way to come here. She goes, how about BAM, Badasses, Alchemists, Mystics? And I said, oh my God, BAM, that is amazing. And so, and mystics kind of, sage and mystics are kind of similar, and alchemists and wizards are kind of similar. Okay. So I kind of could, in my mind, put those together. So that's how that started. And it's been, in September, it's going to be a year that I've been doing these podcasts. So they're just fun.
Fantastic. So how do you define badass?
Yes.
And alchemist and mystic? I mean, those are some deep terms, especially that alchemist and mystic part.
Yes, and a lot of people know what a badass is, but when it comes to alchemist and mystic, they're like, well, I kind of know, right?
But do they know what a badass is?
Well, not how it is defined. You know, and I've attempted on some of the earlier episodes to define these, and so but Leah, you and I one day sat down and said, you know what, let's come up with some definitions, because we're starting this BAM community, and it's just called BAM, and people are like, what does BAM mean? So this is what Leah and I came up with after our evening of thesauruses and Googling and debating. A badass is someone whose authentic personality or behavior inspires awe and respect. I love that.
I do too.
Yeah.
Just by who someone is, they inspire awe and respect. They don't have to do anything, just who they are.
Yes, exactly. So a badass isn't just like the warrior types that go barging through and, you know, or muscle people. It's school teachers.
Yes.
It's writers. It's musicians. It's speakers, reverends. It can be anybody that is inspiring awe and respect, and they are their authentic self, right? Yes. And that was kind of in a roundabout way what I had described on those episodes. Well, it's someone that just walks through fear, and they are who they are. And I've had very mild-mannered guests on here that are like, well, I don't know if I'm a badass. I'm like, you're a badass. Look at what you've done. You've created this community thing, or this multi-interfaith celebration, you know. So badasses come in all shapes and sizes.
Yes, they do.
Yes.
So what do you define as an alchemist?
So alchemists, well, like I was saying, I see magic and wizardry and stuff like that. But when we sat down, and this was a challenging one to define, because an alchemist in traditional ways is someone that turns items into gold, and the philosopher's stone, which was like eternal life and illumination, was what an alchemist was looking for. So, but in our definition of an everyday alchemist is a person who uses a multi-layered process to ignite change for the better. So I had someone on Facebook say, I don't understand the multi-layered process. And igniting change is what I think true alchemy is, whether it's internal or external change. Multi-layered meaning it's not just click, it's done. It's a journey. It's a process. So traditional alchemy, it is a long process. There's different stages and science and chemicals and extractions and conglomerations. But when we're talking about alchemy for spiritual development or physical transformation, it is a process that you're continuing one step forward, one way at a time, and you are igniting change. You're creating change. And if you're doing it as a politician or a spiritual leader or a community leader, you are creating change through the community one step at a time.
I like it. I view what I do teaching Tai Chi and Qigong as alchemy.
Yes. How do you explain a little bit?
Because that is a multi-layered process. It's not something that affects you strictly on the physical plane, strictly on the mental plane, or strictly on the spiritual plane. It affects you in all three of these multiple layers that we inhabit. And it is indeed a process. You can't just come to one class or pick up one Qigong routine and suddenly, oh, I understand myself. I am in balance. I am in harmony with the universe, one with the Tao. No, it's a process that unfolds within you as your elemental being is ignited in different ways through these processes to bring you as a whole, complete, multi-layered person into balance.
That's correct. I think with what I do as well, it's that multi-layered person. I see multi-dimensional because I like to go out into the quantum field and because I realize I can like see people's souls and all their other lifetimes and all that. So it's a process of seeing that we aren't just what we're seeing in front of each other. And it's a complex process to get us to be, in my opinion, we're becoming a whole different kind of human. We're becoming light-filled and illuminated. And we're in a really cool time right now where alchemy is really, really happening. So it's important to have self-care practices to assist this alchemy, to assist this change through if this process of igniting change, and if the ultimate goal is to become this more enlightened human being and helping this planet to shift into a more enlightened planet, it's self-care on all levels. And I know you agree with me.
Totally.
Because we talk about this all the time.
All the time. Yes, it's true.
And you have to find your recipe for self-care. This is something Leanne and I both teach. And I know we still have to define mystic. So let's do that because I want to go into my power alchemy stuff, which is more of the mysticism and the alchemy, which is mentorship. Let's keep going.
Let's move into defining what a mystic is, because that's a difficult definition as well.
Yes, it was, and it is. Traditionally, mysticism means mysteries, right? You're deciphering mysteries. But what we came up with, which I love, a contemplative person who perceives hidden mysteries, obtaining wisdom beyond intellect. So, wait, I feel like I have to cough. No, I'm good. So, contemplation. So, this is the more feminine energy of kind of sitting in stillness and looking at things and observing and listening to, this whole thing about hidden mysteries. You're perceiving hidden mysteries. This could be nature talking to you, communicating with you.
Or the subtle vibrations through the web.
Yes, the subtle vibrations through the web. We can't see that. Some people may. Some people's perception of their third eye is acute and can see things like that. But in general, the population where we're at now can't. But perceiving that, it takes practice. And I'm seeing Kelly Garza has a question about psychic abilities, so I'll address that. And Thanks, Tara Allgood, for your comment about how much I've helped your back with craniosacral. I appreciate that. But mystics, not only perceiving the hidden mysteries of maybe the impressions you're getting from another person or from nature or from the collective humanity or from spirit guides or angels or your higher self. And the whole part about obtaining wisdom beyond intellect. We're all mystics in that way. We all have our logic, but really divine wisdom is accessible to everybody. And you have to be in a state of contemplation and receiving and stillness to be able to access that, because the logical, busy brain normally overshadows the part of the brain that's perceiving that and processing that. So that's why meditation or any kind of activities that balance the two sides of the brain is so important in our self-care regimen, because we need both sides of the brain. We need that to be mystics and bring it in, and then we need to be the badasses and alchemists to put it forth in the world. And we need the logical brain to sort out, because mystical impulses and information a lot of times is kind of dreamlike. And until you do develop your psychic gifts, it is kind of like you have to interpret it, and you need your logical brain to do that, because it might be symbols or it might be an image, or you might just hear random words if you are clairaudient. So at first, until you kind of get things in balance, it's kind of like, all right, well, I'm seeing a picture of a horse. What the heck does that mean? You know? So what it means to you might mean different to me. So that's mystic.
Yes.
We have to go to another break.
Oh, that was fast.
I know. Plus, we're talking about cool shit. And time flies when you're doing that. So before we go to the next break, and I'm looking, Joan Elise, hi. Thank you for loving that definition. Hi, Joanna Salerno. We mentioned you earlier. So Surfing the Sea of Chi is Leah's book. And what has been born out of this is a new class that you're going to be doing called what?
Surfing Chi Workshop.
Okay. So just briefly, because we're going to be going to break, what are you going to be doing there?
Well, it's not just a class, it's also a building of community around healing in nature, because the first part of our session, which is going to take place regularly on the second Saturdays of every month starting in August, the first part of the session is more like a community gathering of people who love the water and just want to get together with others and maybe learn more about the energy aspects of water and how to relate that to that. The actual workshop part will take place later at 10 o'clock. So the whole thing starts at 8:30, runs to about 11:30 in the morning. But at 10 o'clock, we start the actual Surfing Chi workshop, which I designed based on my book and my own experience of having to overcome a fear of getting in the water, and how to do that and how to relate to the water in a way that's less fearful. Because here in Brevard County, we have the most beautiful beaches, and so many people have had the experience like me, because they've told me of they're walking on the beach and they want to go in the water because it's so beautiful, but they're absolutely terrified too, and that's just a shame. So we're going to remedy that with the Surfing Chi workshop, which is quite limited in space. So in the actual workshop, there's only 12 spots available, and just this morning I put up the tickets, made them available on my website, so you better get now and reserve your spot.
And this is Brevard County, Florida, for those that are listening across the whole planet. And what's your website if someone would want to travel here and take your workshop?
Or maybe even somebody local. It's beachsidechigong.com. That's beachsideQIGONG.com. And under the class descriptions, you can learn more about the details of the event, and you can go to the online store and actually reserve your spot now, because only a few people will get in.
We got to go to break. We'll be right back.
right. This is Doug Monda.
This is Karen Monda.
And Chris Hadaway.
And we're the host of Survive, the new podcast brought to you by the Survive First Foundation, a nonprofit organization assisting first responders and their families in need of mental health support due to the lifestyle of being a first responder. So, Chris, tell us what we're going to have.
We're coming to you from retired and active law enforcement officers as well as their spouses to discuss the responder life.
Don't forget, this is an unedited and raw podcast, so we need your interactive suggestions and advice to help us help others.
So find us live on our Survive First Facebook page and join in the conversation, or find us on demand on Spotify, iTunes, or anywhere you listen to podcasts from the Space Coast Podcast Network to you.
All right, we're back. This is Trisha Schmalhofer with BAM Badasses Alchemist Mystics, and I'm here with Leah Williamson, and she is interviewing me, and she just put her foot down and gave me instructions about stuff, and so I am very proud of her because she's being kind of a badass host.
I'm the host, man. I gotta rein you in a
She's
little.
being
Yeah,
badass. I know,
because we've been talking a lot about your past, but we need to move into what
Yes.
you're doing into the future. But first, we
Yes.
started off saying that you are the original badass
I am.
alchemist and mystic.
I am.
So people need to know, what's your most badass moment?
Yes, and this is a hard question.
Yeah, it is.
Because it is about, inspiring awe and respect, being authentic, right? That's what we defined it as.
Yes.
And I had to really look at that. And I think the example I'm going to give is really what gave me awe and respect about myself, not so much about what other people thought.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a time in my life where I had given all my power over to a person that was a mentor. And to the point, it was for a long time that I was disempowered and gave that all away. And the time when I stood up to her and said, "You're leaving my house," because at this point she's living in my home, I'm not listening to you anymore, and you're going to leave. That it was my badass moment because I took my power back. She left, and now with what I'm doing with mentorship and the spiritual development stuff, because she was a spiritual mentor, I realized answering this question, it enforced it, that I am really big on never, ever should a teacher or mentor become a god, become an all-knowing person in your life, that you are the ultimate divine decider of your life. And so I have kind of taken that on as a teacher and a mentor to people, that ultimately you are going to shine more than me, and you're going to embrace your power, and don't ever put me on a pedestal, so that was my most badass moment. It was a very hard thing, but the alchemy of creating change, and then the mysticism, because I really did finally have to stop listening to her and start listening to my own higher self to have that, to do that.
It is very hard to own your own power and to own your own strength and to not let somebody else dictate what you do in your life. And we see that going on a lot right now with how things are being reacted to from the COVID-19. But, that is a hard question, and I was thinking about it.
Yes, what's your answer?
When I wrote it. And first thing that came to mind were very specific incidents in my life. And then I thought, but what's the general thing that ties them all together? And I realized that for me, I am a badass every single time that I face my fears by choice and not by the circumstance of my environment. And that by that choice, I refuse to let the fear dictate where my life is going, which is basically what you did in your badass moment as well.
Yes.
I think a big part of badassery is facing the fears that limit you
Exactly.
in your life. Yes. And we all do that in a lot of different ways.
Yes. And we all have fear. It's walking through it, not going around it, not ignoring it, but just freaking doing it. And you know, at that point in my life, I had support, and that's a big thing that I teach and that I wrote about. I'm gonna highlight my book, but it's about connection. Like, we really, again, the web. Like, it's knowing what your resources are that are fueling you and feeding you and supporting you and loving you, whether it's in the ethereal spiritual world or in your community or friends and family. So
And thus,
yes,
the birth of the
BAM community. So every year, my family, we all pick a word for our year. And one of my nieces picked community, okay? Mm-hmm. She capitalized the C and capitalized the U. So it was like unity, right? And I remember looking, I'm like, that's genius, and that's exactly what the whole world needs this year. And then look what's been going on in 2020, a lot of fragmentation. So, you know, a year ago, this podcast started, and I realized my lineup of guests were all BAMs, and you were one of them. And it started becoming a community of badasses, alchemists, mystics. And I realized this is what we need, that unity. All of us kind of putting all of our energy, our badassery and alchemy and mysticism together. And I've been looking to start a center for I don't know how long. And that's how we ended up meeting the first time, right?
Yes.
So, you know, it's like finally there's actually a space. And I kept trying, but the timing wasn't right. I was in my mysticism, I was hearing that this is important, but I realized that what I was hearing this time before it actually manifested, it was a more clearer direction of this is it. Like, all those other times were me trying to manifest it and just keeping that energy alive of that this community is needed. Mm-hmm. But it's time now.
Yes.
It's time.
It is, and a lot of people are realizing that they need to come together and support each other and empower each other more as we face newer challenges
Mm-hmm.
in ways that we haven't dealt with as a species before.
You know, what do you mean by that?
What do I mean by that?
As a species.
As a species, because I think with the COVID-19, this is probably the first time in our collective species history on the planet that we're aware of that all of humanity is experiencing the same kind of fear and stress at the same time.
Yep.
And is aware that the whole planet is going through the same thing at the same time. So it is definitely a collective thing that's going on.
Yes. And for those of you that are mystics and you are psychic and you have far-reaching abilities into even other worlds and such, that's happening on all levels. Oh. As a planet, that's happening. But there's a lot of change in alchemy happening on all levels. So I feel this convergence of it's time on all planes that this is going on. So the fear factor, and that's why I feel like being a badass, because we just said walking through that fear of saying, yeah, we're in this time that's causing fear, but we got to keep moving forward. We have to use our alchemy and change things. And where is your light? What is your light? How can you put that out there in the world? We're changing on a cellular level right now. It's not just we're changing our mind and our bodies are changing and our immune systems. We have to stay healthy, and that's all true. But there's a deeper alchemical change happening within our bodies. And I feel like we've been waiting for this for centuries. And I'm sure there's been times in the past where it's like, this is it. This is when it's going to happen. And it did happen at the level it was supposed to happen, but it's I feel like it's different now.
This feels like a much more multi-layered change.
It is inward and outward
Yes.
expansion. It's that whole web, right?
Yes.
The whole web. You called it the Tao, right? That's the
one word.
That's kind
for
of
it,
like the
yes.
word. I know it cannot be named or it cannot be described, but I think of like the whole concept of God, of universe, of like the bigger thing, right? And I just see this web as how God or that bigger force, how it connects and operates and sends the chi and the Holy Spirit and the energy and
Yes, we're
right?
all connected through the web of existence, through
Yes.
the Higgs boson field.
yes.
As it is now validified in physics.
I know.
Yes, and what an exciting time that science is validating
Yes.
things that mystics have told us for centuries.
Like centuries and centuries and centuries. And yes. And science is about observing and then testing the observation. That's what all of our ancient mystics
did,
and
yep.
scientists and alchemists all have done.
Yes.
It's the same. So I think we have to go. Yep. It's time for our last break, and then we'll have another segment. Okay. So we're going to talk about my book that came out last year called The Beauty of Authenticity. It's been a year. And it was a #1 Amazon bestseller. And I still have like 10 copies, and I will sign it for you with a personal message. If you email bamcommunity11@gmail.com, I think I'm going to sell them for $10. I probably will charge shipping, which is like $3. So $13. And I want to get the last of these off the shelf because there's some really valuable information in here. And my chapter is about spiritual authenticity, which is really talking about connection and the importance of having your spiritual self-practice that matches what your needs are, not what your family says, not what society says, but it is an ever-changing thing of your spiritual development, how you practice that. So email me if you'd like a copy, and I'll sign it and put a nice message for you. We'll be right back. All right, this is Trisha with BAM Badasses Alchemist Mystics. Jesse Hall, our producer of Space Coast Podcast Network, is being very generous and bringing us right back so we have all the time to keep talking about our cool stuff. Thanks, Jesse. So, where do you want to go?
So we've talked about BAM as a podcast and defined BAM and how you are a badass alchemist mystic and learned a lot more about you. But let's talk about this community thing that's going on and how, what is your vision for BAM ultimately, say in the next few years as it becomes more established?
I think BAM, I have a huge vision of it being a bigger space, lots of nature. Nature is where we're healing and we are healed. And so property and possibly even living places, retreat center, where you can get healing, where you can take classes, where you can have gatherings, you can, people can live there, they can work, we'll have gardens. I mean, I honestly see like a whole community, like an actual community.
So drawing in every aspect of badassery, alchemism, and mysticism to empower the entire community, whether it's coming from me and what I do or from you do or other BAMs in our community, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yes, there'll be, I would love like living space, but also people can just come and contribute their BAMery, you know. Like we were saying when we were defining badasses, alchemists, mystics, is, you know, we come in all shapes and sizes. It's not just the standard print of like imprint of this is what that looks like. We need everybody, especially if what we're saying is true and we are shifting as a human race. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, there's all these things of we may have to go back to living off of the land. Like, we don't know what's going to happen, but that's what I prefer. I did a thing on Facebook about retreats. I asked people, what do they really want out of a retreat? And healing in nature and finding balance were the two top things people are looking for. And with BAM community, even though we have an in space, you know, and we're going to have classes in there and we're going to live stream because we have to work with technology and try to get things out there. But we're going to start a whole BAM in nature, that's what I'm calling it, by the way, series where we're doing things outdoors, where your Surfing Chi workshop is going to be our first big event in August. And I do oracle card readings every Saturday on Facebook. It's at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Awesome.
I'm really good at it.
You are really good at it.
I really it's because I really enjoy it, and I use cards, but I also am giving personal messages, and it's just so fun. There's people from different countries that come on there to get a card reading, but I'm gonna attempt to do that at the Surfing Chi. I'm gonna see how reception is, but I would love to just do events outside.
That is our ultimate goal, right?
Yes.
To incorporate natural healing methodologies in an outdoor healing environment. So even though our space is very small, we are using that community platform to launch those events from that are taking place in an outdoor environment, not necessarily in the currently small community space in Palm Bay, which will expand very soon.
Yes, we had to, and we talked about it, you know, because Leah's a founder of the BAM community space, and we have Amy Perez as our other co-founder, and I had her on. She was the witchy, twitchy cop that I had on a few episodes ago.
That's a total badass
I
right
know,
there.
she's such a badass. But we've kind of come together and said, let's make this happen. Like, we're putting money into this and we're making this happen, and we're looking at the space. It's like, yes, this is just a small space where we can have like maybe 5 or 6 people. But, you know, with the COVID monster out there, that's probably all we can have anyway. But it's actually creating the container, creating the space in third dimensional reality that is now the base platform of BAM community to go where it's supposed to go.
We're creating the communication and the unity of those BAMs so that we can all share those badass talents that we have. Maybe your badass talent is something like, you know, everything there is about natural gardening and how to grow food in your yard in Florida, which is crazy hard to do with the bugs and the heat.
I know. With being indoors and being in our houses so much, I'm trying to start gardens and stuff. And Florida, it's really hard to grow vegetables. And I know people across the U.S. are all doing this because I hear they were getting chickens and they're creating gardens, but it's hard. Or a badass could be doing like a self-defense class, you know, or it could be like, I want to do spiritual development stuff. We
have people in our community who are sound healers.
Yes.
That's pretty badass when you recognize all of the noise pollution in our society with traffic and construction and machinery. It's very important to heal the auditory systems that we have as well.
That's right. Breath work, you know, you and I are both big proponents of breath work. So that's something, meditation skills, but also dance, like movement, different kinds of movement to embody spirit, put it in the body, like be in this physical body.
That's the whole idea with surfing as being an alchemy that can heal you, because it's how you move your physical body makes a difference in your health.
Yes.
And if your idea of exercise is about how much weight you can throw around, that's not necessarily giving your mind and body balance together.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Tai Chi and Qigong, you're teaching there now. You're teaching there Mondays and Wednesdays at various times at the community
yep.
center. And I've been taking her classes and I'm learning, and I'm like, wow, this really is moving chi or moving energy in my body. I'm used to working out hard, like in the gym, doing cardio. And there's times during Tai Chi we're doing very gentle movements and these breath patterns. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sweating and I'm hot and I feel like I just had a workout.
Yeah, you don't have to work hard to work smart and get the benefits that you need.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. I also love art. I love all kinds of artistic expression. That's very BAM to me. So I would love to have artists come in and maybe do, I don't know, like,
we're looking to incorporate some of those talented art therapy healers in our community who are badasses in their field.
That's right.
And need to contribute that creative element to our group.
Yes. So, eventually, I always saw BAM becoming like on the road, like maybe little like events
and it actually is going on the road.
Yes, it is. Do you want to talk about your BAM on the road event?
Well, just very quick BAM on the road event. We
have time.
I was blessed to be invited to speak about my particular badassery at a Smithsonian traveling exhibit that's taking place in North Carolina in mid-August. And so hopefully we're going to be able to do some live stream of that event, that badass event, which will be held out in nature.
I know.
Alongside the Little Tennessee River. To develop more communion with water, which is what the Smithsonian exhibit is about waterways and the American relationship with water.
Oh.
Yeah. So we are definitely going on the road already.
Yes. BAM on the road,
Yes.
BAM on the move, BAM in nature, BAM community, badasses, alchemist, mystics.
So not only is it part of your vision of the community ultimately, it is actually unfolding before your eyes.
It is.
Yes.
And just for Joanna, another shout out to Joanna Salerno, because we did a BAM workshop over in Fort Myers last year, because that's this vision of, no, BAM's not just going to stay here. Like it's gotta go out there. So this is just continuing that web, right?
Exactly.
We're reaching out on this web, and we're all BAMs, every single one of us.
The key, I think, to being a BAM is to owning it.
Own it.
Just choose to embrace your power by overcoming your fear of that power.
Yes.
Which a lot of people have, that fear of their own power, which I think is a big part of discounting maybe your intuitive abilities because you're scared of them, discounting your ability to learn how to surf maybe because you're older. I started at 40. I've talked to people who are starting in their 50s and 60s. These are genuine fears that people have, but we choose to face those fears and rise above them. And that's...
we were talking about alchemy and change, and I'm getting, in my mystical moments, I'm getting talked to by my higher self. Like, you need to have more time every day where you're sitting in contemplation, because my role is starting to change, and it's invoking a small amount of fear because it's kind of shifting some things for me. And even though I've always had money coming in and abundance has always just been in my life, if like I'm starting to change trajectories in careers, there's always that little fear, right? That ego mind that's like, well, this is a change. What if, you don't do good at that? Or what if the money's not there? What if you can't pay your bills? It's always like, am I going to be homeless on the street without food somewhere? I've never been homeless on the street without food. Some people actually have, and they've come back from it. But I guess my point is, it's always a continuous, there's always change.
Yes.
Adapting to the change, Because if we're growing and expanding and becoming homo luminous beings, if we're becoming light-filled beings, we have to always be ready for the adaptation of what's coming in this flow through the web to push us into our best human selves, right?
What's the next wave of energy that we're going to encounter in this ever-changing sea of chi in which we all exist and share?
And we're talking a lot about water, but I said this on my Facebook Live today. There are waves in every element. There are waves in the air and fire, in the earth. There's waves always influencing us. So if we're going to be rigid and, no, I'm not going to change, we're going to get dragged. You get pushed, and it's a little more bumpy and painful. So practicing that fluidity of, okay, what wave's coming now? And in my case, it's like a whole kind of shift in my role of what I'm kind of stepping into. And I realize, I'm dragging my feet a little bit. Like, I got to pick up the feet and just allow it to move me, because that's always worked in the past.
Yes, just let the wave take you, knowing that you know how to navigate yourself. You've always had the tools you need.
Always.
And I think that that's so pertinent right now, because so many people are having change thrown in their face, not by choice.
Every direction, it's hitting people, and it's really throwing people off.
That's the thing. When we choose to embrace fear and change as a choice, we learn how to navigate those rocky waters. When it gets thrown at us unexpectedly during times of pandemics, let's say, and economic shutdown.
Yeah. And we can only blame, we're totally out of time, but we can always blame anything. We can always make anything the monster, anything that's going on. But truly, there's always going to be another thing that's coming. So it's really just getting into that flow and getting yourself balanced and taken care of. And so you can adapt and be fluid, and do listen to your higher guidance, because everybody has it.
Embrace your own mystical self, realize what your own alchemical balance is, and engage in those activities as much as you possibly can, so that you can become your authentic badass and own it for yourself, even during times of pandemic and economic change and utter fear in the grocery store and everything else that we've been encountering in the last few months.
Yes. Yeah. So this is an opportunity to really practice your BAMery. So so bamcommunity11@gmail.com is the email. Get on our newsletter. Email me, and I'll put you on there. And bamcommunity11.com is our website under construction, but we do have stuff on there. And you want to give your information one more time, Leah?
Sure. Beachsideqigong.com is my website. That's beachsideqigong.com, where you can find out about all the details of our first BAM event, which is definitely a healing in nature event, surfing chi workshop. Which we're starting August 8th. So exciting. I'm totally stoked.
Yay. All right. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time on BAM.